The museum began as a teaching collection of Dr. Thomas Dent Mutter. He was professor of surgery at Jefferson Medical College from 1841 to 1856. And so it started as his accumulation of material to teach his course in pathological anatomy. This stuff was not intended for the general public. It was always kept behind doors for the profession only. This stuff is verboten, it's taboo. People say, shouldn't she be buried? Is this respectful to have this body on display? Absolutely. What is so respectful about sticking a body under the earth? It's an enormous gift that they give by allowing their bodies to be studied for the benefit of the living. I grew up outside of Philadelphia, and there were always rumors about a medical museum where you could see babies in bottles. And the funny thing is that I went to church next door to this building since I was 8 years old. Destiny. The one question I'm asked more than anything else in the museum is it real? Just because something is in a jar doesn't mean it's real. If it's in a jar in fluid, it's real. Back when it was more difficult to preserve wet tissue, oftentimes it was represented in wax, because that was very durable. And wax is perfectly adapted to preserving all sorts of dermatological conditions. A lot of these moulageurs, the wax modelers, started out making wax fruit. Artistically, they're obviously creations of a high level of skill. And it's kind of neat. This is the series of sliced heads. People just seem fascinated by the fact that you can take a face and a head and just slice it up like that and display portions. Whatever emotional reaction you have, that's good. If you come in and you're totally clinical about everything you see, you're not getting the full impact of the Mutter Museum. It's humans looking at humans. You see people with these horrible lesions on their faces, and you start thinking about the fact that they had to wake up every morning for years with a face that they knew was repellent to other people. You know, you wake up and you've got a pimple, and you feel awful, you feel very self-conscious. Well, imagine when you have this huge, fungating lesion on your nose, and no doctor can make it go away. It's a guy that died in 1973. His name is Harry Eastlack. He had fibrodysplasia ossificans progressiva, skeletal bone growing outside the normal skeleton. By the time he died, he could only move his fingers and toes.
How did he arrive?
In a large wooden crate full of packing peanuts. A lot of peanuts. His sister, she used to come after his skeleton came into the museum in the 1980s. She said it bothered her less to see Harry as a skeleton than when he was alive and suffering.
How many specimens are you on a first-name basis with?
Not very many. Well, of course, we have the Hurdle Skull Collection, where we have 139 skulls, and for the most part, we know the names and ages and cause of death and birthplace for all of those individuals. We have John Wilkes Booth, we have Chief Justice Marshall's bladder stones, Grover Cleveland's jaw tumor, the skull of Ellen Jones, famous murder victim, of course, Mary Ashbury, the dwarf, but I don't usually call her Mary. I usually refer to her as the achondroplastic dwarf.
Tell me about her.
She's actually a rather sad obstetrical case. Doctors were called in to this brothel where this white dwarf, Mary Ashbury, had found refuge. And I think the phrase was, "There all her misfortunes fell upon her, and she became pregnant." So when they found her, she was in labor. The baby's head was normal, and her pelvis wasn't, so it became stuck. The doctors did what was called for at that time. They tried to break up the baby's head, puncture it so that it could be compressed and actually removed vaginally. They were not successful in completely collapsing the head, and they had to go to cesarean section, belatedly. Not surprisingly, the mother died of peritonitis 3 days later. It was a very typical but a very sad story. They prepared her so that her hand was holding the baby's head with, of course, the sensibilities of the late 19th century. Not a problem. Nowadays, I thought that was a little over the top, so we have her displayed with the head on the floor. The museum is full of stories of people. Some of the names I know, some I don't, but they're all human beings, or parts thereof.